Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into something pretty significant in the US, the whole issue of overweight and obesity.
Yeah, it's a major health challenge.
We've got some insights here from Dr. Borrego, and our aim is really to pull out the key points, the actionable stuff.
Right, and the scale of it is, well, it's huge. Over 70% of the U.S. population.
70%, that's staggering. So according to this source material, what's the main driver here?
Well, Dr. Borrego really points towards a fundamental imbalance. It's about the calories we take in versus, the energy we actually use.
Okay, calorie imbalance. Let's get into the specifics a bit. The source mentions average daily intake numbers.
It does. We're talking somewhere between 3,600 and maybe 4,000 calories per day on average in the U.S.
Wow. And how does that stack up against what people generally need?
Well, think about it. The average adult need is often estimated around, say, 2,000 calories. Give or take, of course.
So that's a huge surplus, like consistently.
Exactly. A really significant gap. And Dr. Borrego suggests this consistent overconsumption is, well, the primary engine behind weight gain for many.
It makes sense. Simple math, almost.
In a way, yes. Though, the source might also touch on how our modern food environment, with all the processed options, kind of makes it easier to overconsume without realizing.
Ah, right, like overriding our natural full signals.
Precisely. And that ties into another point Dr. Borrego apparently raises the impact on younger generations.
Okay, how so? What's different for them, according to the source?
It's sort of a combination of factors. Easier access to fast food, more processed snacks readily available, and also maybe more sedentary time. Smartphones, tablets, less physical activity built into the day.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. It seems like these factors just pile on, exacerbating that calorie imbalance from a young age.
It seems to be the implication, yes.
Now, people are always looking for solutions. There are weight reduction programs, injections, pills.
Yeah.
What's the perspective from this source on those?
Dr. Borrego acknowledges they exist and might offer some temporary help for some individuals.
Just temporary, though.
That's the emphasis. The argument presented is that they don't fix the underlying issue, the eating habits that led to the weight gain in the first place.
So they're not seen as a sustainable long-term fix.
Not according to this perspective, no. Sustainable management really requires changing those fundamental eating behaviors.
Which leads us to this idea of common sense that Dr. Borrego mentions. That sounds simple.
Maybe deceptively so. The suggestion is to apply common sense to eating habits as a path to healthier weight.
Okay, what might that actually look like? Based on the source material, what does common sense mean here?
Well, without adding outside ideas, it seems to imply things like maybe being more mindful about what we eat, perhaps choosing whole foods more often.
Less processed stuff.
Potentially. And maybe being more aware of portion sizes or, just listening more closely to our body's signals of hunger and fullness, basic intuitive things.
Right. Not necessarily a complicated diet plan, but more foundational awareness.
That seems to be the gist of it from Dr. Borrego's perspective presented here.
Okay, so let's try and boil this down then. The takeaway from this deep dive, based on Dr. Borrego's points, is that overweight and obesity in the U.S. are largely driven by that calorie surplus consistently eating more than we burn.
Yes, that's the core mechanical issue highlighted.
And while there are quick fixes out there, the real lasting solution, according to the source, involves changing our actual eating habits for the long haul.
Exactly. It's about those sustainable shifts, applying maybe that common sense Dr. Borrego talks about. Less focus on temporary aids, more on foundational patterns.
Makes sense. It's not always the easy answer people want, perhaps, but maybe the most effective one.
That seems to be the conclusion drawn from the material.
So, here's a final thought for everyone listening. Maybe take a moment to consider your own daily eating habits. Those small, almost automatic choices. Could applying a bit more of that simple common sense, whatever that means for you, make a real difference to your well-being in the long run? Something to chew on.
Definitely food for thought.
Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive.